Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening to all our listeners. My name is Hilton Young, also known as GF Soldier. Welcome to the podcast, My Brother's Keeper, and we're here to talk about good mental health amongst us men, how we can get better, how we can come together in strong brotherhood, and just live a more successful and healthy life. Today on our podcast, we have esteemed gentlemen that is joined with me today, and I'm so blessed to have y'all. It's an honor, it's a privilege to have y'all. We got first we got Pastor Alex Allen, and then we got Mr. Carl Roberts, the motivator, and we
Motivator.
got our new brother coming in tonight to help us uh, spearhead this thing, Mr. Joseph Roberts. How y'all doing, fellas?
Oh,
Good, good. Glad to be here.
So, fellas, would y'all like to introduce yourself and say what y'all do before we start get delving into these topics? Let's start with you, Pastor Alex. Pastor Alex, can you hear me? Everybody
he
else
might,
can hear me, right?
he might be on mute.
Yeah, I think his
Right.
mic is muted.
His mic is. Can you hear me, Pastor Alex? Can you hear me? No.
It's on mute. He don't know it's on mute.
Unmute. Unmute yourself. Let me see if he can get me in the chat. Get you in the chat. Oh, he's out. He's back in. Can you hear us, Pastor Alex?
I'll go ahead and start while he's getting himself
Okay, go ahead.
together.
Okay.
My name is Joseph B. Roberts. I am author and the host of the Blessings in the Streets podcast. In addition to that, I am a deacon, I'm a moderator, speaker, instructor, kind of jack of all trades, just a master of a few, but and still working on that. But I'm all about the encouragement and uplifting of people, specifically rooted in the foundation of godly principles and doing that. I believe that component is a necessary must in all facets of life, and in particular, our conversation for this evening as we talk about mental health. That his presence is definitely a major component in that process of us, particularly as men, being able to have a mental health lifestyle that is on more on the positive end than on the negative end, which unfortunately particularly for men is something that we oftentimes struggle with just because of, for a variety of different reasons, primarily one being, we just too tough to talk about things. We're too tough to express ourselves and share our feelings. So I know this is something we're going to delve into a lot more as we move along in the conversation, but that's a little bit about me. And again, brothers, I'm just happy to be in the company of you and looking forward to the conversation.
Amen. Amen. Brother Carl, how about yourself? You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, rise and elevate, everybody.
All
My
right.
brand, my brand is Rise and Elevate. I'm the CEO and owner. Um, I do motivational speaking here in Fort Worth, Texas. Locally motivator here in Texas, Fort Worth, and I've been doing this since 2019 when I started my business with Rise and Elevate. No negative, nothing is my motto. Positive vibes only. That's all I do, and that's all I ask people to do when I'm around them. So I'm talking and I'm encouraging the youth from ages 10 to 17 to do the same thing as well, trying to make a change and make a difference in their life so they can make a difference in changing other people's life, and it can kind of change the world around. So that's where I'm at. And I have motivational reminders as well, t-shirts and wristbands that I give out to the kids, just to remind them how to keep like wristbands on their wrist to stay positive at all times, and just think before they do something that can get them in trouble. We're trying to keep them out of the penitentiary. That's what my main goal is. Once I was already a troubled youth and I stood before the judge, and I'm trying to get them not to stand before the judge to get that. I got a slap on the wrist, but they might not get that slap. So
Right. Right.
that's what I'm trying to stop. And we got the same name,
I
Joseph
see.
Roberts.
Yeah.
One day we kind of related. Yeah, so that's good. Good, good. That's
Good.
that's my spiel.
Okay, good. Well, for me, I'm an author. I'm a poet. I've been this is my 23rd year, going into my 24th year doing poetry locally, nationally, and internationally. I'm also a counselor, mental health professional. I got my bachelor's in psychology, got my master's in clinical mental health counseling, and I'm currently working on my PhD in counseling, education, and supervision. Uh, right now, I work as a telehealth crisis care coordinator, which means we work 24/7. We deal with we deal with crisis all over the metroplex, and it can be from anything from addictions to housing, homelessness, mental health issues such as bipolar, schizophrenia, major depressive disorder, stress and anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, anything that's in the DSM-5, the Diagnostical and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. We deal with that, and we try to care for our people mentally so they can be more healthy, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually for that matter. So we try to work from the inside out, and that's kind of why we're here today. We just want to try to see if we can work from the inside out and talk about some good mental health from internally, so that we can prosper externally from a physical perspective. Uh, Alex Allen, can you hear us, sir?
Oh yeah, I had to do the old soft reset, but we're here.
Got you. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself before we delve into these topics real quick?
Well, I always tell people that I am a pastor, number one. Number two, professional saxophonist, been playing for 27 years. I don't know where the time went. But I look, you know, younger than what I care to tell anybody now. Usually it's the other way around. You look older than what you care to tell people. But um, recovering 4-year mental health advocate, that's just what I am. That's what I do. Because I always tell people, if you don't have a strong mind and you have a strong body, it means nothing,
Mm.
because you can't even use both of them at the same time. So it's power of the will of the mind. So that's about it.
Okay, good. Uh, so I want to. What I want to do is I want to lay out some stats here before we get started into our first topic. The first stat that I came up with is black men in America are more likely to experience a number of stressors than any other racial ethnic group. The leading cause of death amongst black men is heart issues or types of heart diseases. Uh, Also, black men have a higher lifetime prevalence of post traumatic stress disorder than any other racial group. Um, so from that perspective, and I have other perspectives and other kind of stats or facts to add to. So from your perspective and your experience, fellas, why do many men struggle to ask for help? Now, before you start with that, I want to say that in terms of why men struggle to ask for help, I want to say that I lost my thought. So I'm gonna come back. I'll come back to the thought. Let's start. Anybody want to start? Why do many men struggle to ask for help in terms of mental health?
I,
Any
I
perspective you want to come from?
I think I can say real quick. I think judgment. I think judgment. How they gonna be judged by somebody else? If you do sit down at the table and kind of put your vulnerability out there, how you gonna get looked upon? So that's a big thing I think about. They talk. They talking and talking and talking and how we want to be like you. We don't want nobody to talk about us or know our business. So that's what I think. Just judgment.
Okay, brother
I would
Joseph.
add, I would say, I think first off, and I'm big on this about kind of going back to the beginnings, of your foundations, where where your story begins, and you know if you've had the fortune of growing up, let's just say in a home, particularly as a black man, if you've had the fortune of growing up in a home where you actually had a father figure present, a lot of times, for and I think we all are in enough age range or close enough to it to know what this is like, where you just weren't taught to be emotional or to open up your feelings because it was always considered to be a sign of weakness. So if you wanted to shed a tear, if you wanted to express how you felt about something, that was oftentimes shunned upon to do so. And so if you've been restricted in any way, let's just say because that was something that you were told was a negative thing, then yeah, it would be difficult for you, even in years later as you get into adulthood, to be able to open up and say, expressing yourself and opening up, because you just were never given a pathway or an avenue to do so. And then when you think about, for many of us as black men growing up, unfortunately, we don't oftentimes have that two-parent household. A lot of times we're growing up in a single parent household, like myself and many others. So then if I'm being raised, say, by my mom, now I'm trying to be tough, not even so much because the mom is trying to restrict your emotions, even though sometimes that happens. Sometimes you're just trying to be strong for her because dad's not there and I don't want to add any extra pressure. If you're that kind of kid that grew up and you saw your mom struggle and trying to do everything that she could to take care of you and all that, you don't want to add no problems to that. You don't want to add no drama to it. So sometimes you just hold in because you're trying to be strong for her, or you're trying to be strong just in, if there's other siblings in the home, you're trying to be strong for them, depending upon, what your age is in that home or what have you. So there's all of these barriers, whether they are imposed by others or self-imposed by you, that might cause you to just say, you know what, I'm just going to keep it to myself. I'm just going to hold it in. And that's, unfortunately, that's the danger, because you got broken, hurting men who've been holding in something that maybe have happened, to your point, Hilton, when you talked about, things that happen traumatically, as early as childhood. And here they are, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60 years old, broken men who never had a chance to unload, who never had the chance to do that. And they don't know how, because again, that pathway was never opened up or created for them. They don't even understand how to navigate that. And unfortunately, by the time many of them do, it's either too late because it's cost them their lives, or they've allowed it to build up so much that they're just a broken mess, if you will, and it takes a long time to just kind of recover and bounce back from that. So that's kind of a couple of, a little bit of my thoughts on that situation.
Okay, Pastor Alex, how do you feel about that? Why do many men struggle to ask for help?
Well, number one, they don't want to. Uh, you know,
Right,
because it I always tell people the answer to anything is a choice.
right.
Um, I can only speak for myself, and I'll just give a brief example. As an athlete, soldier, because I was one. Um, I was such a control freak. I love to control the game. I love to dictate the tempo of a game. Um, but then eventually you try to take that attitude to real life situations, and you have that one moment where you come to yourself, because we all have it. You can lie to everybody else, you can't lie to yourself. And I realized I am out of control. And a quote that my therapist told me 4 years ago, she said, with this attitude, you will mess up any friendship, relationship, or any ship you set foot in. And I realized that I was out of control. And to go back to the question, we simply don't want to. And as Robert said, you know, being raised to, okay, you're not supposed to act like that. You're not supposed to have any type of emotion. I mean, or and it's like as I got older, I said, did are we creating cyborgs? You know? And we live in a world now where it's cancel culture. And so especially people that are prominent and that have marquee value, quote, you say I need to go to therapy, it's like, okay, well, something's wrong with you. But the statistics say 1 in 4 people you meet are mentally ill. So next time you somewhere at a grocery store, just count 1, 2, 3, 4 and pick one. But and I always tell people it's and then you go to testosterone, the ego, the arrogance, the pride, which always goes before the fall, is the hardest thing for me, because I can only talk about me, was taking those 20 steps because I counted from my car into the front door to check in. I knew if I could do that, I crossed the next hurdle. The next hurdle was sitting on that couch, the one you see on TV. And I was like, oh my God, it's the couch. But
Mm.
putting my ego to the side and that arrogance to the side was my way out.
Hmm.
But and then the other part is having forums like this where you hear the whole thing on social media, we listen but we don't judge.
Mm.
Really? Is that really what we're doing? Because they'll listen to you and then go judge you in the car and pick up the phone, girl, boy,
Yeah,
Mm.
So
yeah, yeah.
that's my take on it.
Mm.
So we got vulnerability. I hear that from brother Carl and then brother Joe.
Mhm.
Can I call you Joe? Or is it Joseph? Am I
We
okay? I just want
good.
to make sure because some people no, that's Joseph, sir. I know some people that's real. No, my name is not Joe. Don't ever call me
Right.
that again. It's Joseph. Okay. So I'm hearing the environmental aspect of it. Of we're not raised to be that way. Father not being in the home. So I'm hearing environmental and societal stresses from you. Uh, Pastor, I'm hearing more of the choice to not want to do it. But based on the choice, do you think that we are aware? Do we have some type of awareness to be able to even make a decision whether or not we want to go to these people or not, or go for help or not? Is the awareness there? And if not, then why do you think that is? If it is there or if it's not there, because I feel like the negative stigma that's out there today, that you're crazy if you go ask for help in terms of mental health. Something wrong with you. You're crazy. Uh, the overuse of the term bipolar is out of
Mhm.
control. Most people don't know what that means, but now they use it as an everyday part of their vocabulary and a everyday part of their language. So, do we feel like the awareness is there? And if not, what kind of things should we do so that a brother can know what kind of choice to make in that manner? Anybody
Um,
can answer that. Yeah,
Personally, I don't really believe that is the awareness is as strong as it should be. There is an awakening now. Not just particularly in the black community, but in the black church.
Mhm.
Because I tell my congregation all the time, it's more than just about Moses in the mountain. We have to get to the real deal,
Mhm.
because when you look at, and because I'm a linguist, so I don't want to sound like this is an academic setting, but when you break down the word conscience, 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 you can't have spirituality without science.
Gotcha.
So when you talk about consciousness, of course, first thing you think about is the human mind. What haven't we tapped into that can have guys in forums like this or any other forums that say, well, hey, I got an issue, you know. So I really believe that if we, the quote unquote church, takes the walls down, because a lot of this stuff can be helped with a simple conversation and a simple appointment.
Gotcha.
But then you have to do the maintenance to go along with it, just like any other thing. So I don't really think that the awareness is as prevalent as it should be, but there is a rolling, kind of like a snowball in a sense,
Mhm.
starting to roll. And now the awareness is starting to show itself. So,
Okay. From that perspective, do you feel like the church is starting to gear more towards informing our
yes.
congregants of mental health?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
here's a statistic: over 2,000 pastors quit a month.
Wow.
That's three things in this world don't lie: DNA, data, and dogs. They don't lie. Just y'all probably saw one sitting up here, but
So quit. quit being pastors or just quit
They quit being pastors.
altogether? Quit being
Period.
pastors, okay.
And
But
it
they
goes to mental health.
right.
It used to be, oh, well, something's going on. No, no, no. It's this, because when you got to deal with, let alone 50, 60, or a few thousand personalities,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it can become mind boggling. And we don't know what these people are dealing with at home either.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's a loaded gun, but there is. I mean, just to answer the question, now pastors are having forums and meetings once or sometimes even twice a week saying, okay, what's going on? Are you okay? Is the church okay? Are you paying your bills? Are you going to blow your brains out? And that's not an exaggeration. Those are the questions I ask,
Mm-hmm.
because we all have to be accountable to someone. Even pastors need to be pastored.
Gotcha.
I don't care if you're a pastor, an apostle, a bishop, or as my Uncle Carlton would say, a son of a bishop. We all need to be pastored. We
Mm-hmm.
all need somebody we can say, hey, this is what I got. And I don't need you to quote me scripture. I need you to give me a solution.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay, so Brother Carl, because I'm gonna have to say y'all first name, because I'll keep saying wanting to say Brother Roberts, and both of y'all got the same last name. So I'm gonna go to Brother Carl. So in terms of vulnerability, can we put vulnerability in the proper context? Do we believe vulnerability is weakness?
Well, it depends on. It depends
And
on.
anybody can answer this. Anybody, we can deal with vulnerability. Anybody can answer. Go ahead, Brother Carl. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I would just say, it depends on your mindset of it too. And it depends on your age. I mean, just your mindset. Because sometimes you would think coming up, oh, I don't want to be vulnerable because I don't want to seem weak.
Mm-hmm.
But as you grow and you mature in life, then it's okay to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it won't come back and bite you. So I mean, it's okay then. So I just think it's a mindset, you know, thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would I would agree with that. I think initially when you just don't know, um, or I should say when all you know is that vulnerability equals weakness, then that's what you embrace, that's what you take on, that's what you roll with. Um, but through maturity, and I would say specifically spiritual maturity and understanding, where you can ultimately get your strength from, where you can ultimately get your comforting from, where you can ultimately get your understanding from. Um, then in time, it allows you to put that pride aside. It allows you to get clarity on no, the transparency, the vulnerability. It's not weakness. It's actually strength when I can stand in that and own it. I was just actually having a conversation about that this morning. At our church, we kind of like have a little rally session with our servants that are going to be serving for that day, and I had the opportunity to lead this morning, and I was speaking on the subject matter of this whole desire for people to want to fit in, and a lot of times how we get caught up in the whole fitting in. We seem like when we're not able to fit in, or we can't seem to identify with fitting in, we think that something is wrong with us, like there's something that's strange about us, and it's the same concept as we did with vulnerability. Vulnerability means you're weird, it's strange, you're weak, you're supposed to be that way. You're supposed to be vulnerable. There's supposed to be an element to you that you don't have all of the answers to, that you don't have it all figured out. Because that's the problem. Initially, we carry ourselves, and again, I have to go back to having that relationship with Christ, because if I don't acknowledge that, then I think I can handle everything, all the storms, all the challenges, all the weights, all the barriers, all the burdens. I can just take that on my own and work it out. And until I find out that I can't, until it gets to the point where it overtakes me and it starts to impact my health, it starts to impact my state of mind, it starts to impact me in my relationships with my family or friends or coworkers or anything like that. So yeah, in the beginning, that vulnerability seems to be the thing that that again that we associate with weakness, but in maturity, as we grow, as we understand that, wait a minute, maybe I'm looking at this from a wrong perspective. And again, I have to go back to to having that relationship with Christ and saying, let me take off my worldly lenses to this and put on my godly lenses and see it from a different perspective. And then looking at it that way, I now say, okay, you know what? It's okay for me to be vulnerable. It's okay for me to not know how to handle everything or not being able to come, be able to do everything on my own. It's okay. Now I need to have that conversation. And for me, and for anybody that's a believer, you would start off. Let me talk to God about that. Let me get some guidance and some direction. But I think you have to take it a step further, as Pastor talked about earlier. Is the prayers are good, the conversation is good, but at some point I need some practical, applicable stuff that I can, do right now. And that's where you tap in to having that select person that you can speak to. Now, again, and I had to learn that about the whole therapy. In fact, Hilton, the first time I met you, we were at a men empowerment event, and I had an opportunity to meet a brother there who, Danny, had opportunity to meet a brother there who happened to be a therapist. And that was the first time I had ever experienced it, because I was one of those guys who were like many others that's for crazy people. That's for the people who don't know what they're doing, until I had a chance to experience it and see it for myself. But what was significant about that, he wasn't just a therapist. He was a Christian therapist. He was a Black therapist. He was a male therapist. So he hit all of the boxes to make me feel that I was talking to somebody relatable, who could identify with the challenges that I'm dealing with, because he's same gender, same ethnicity, same faith. I got the whole mix, so he can hit all of the areas simultaneously for me. So it helped me to transition and understand, okay, it's okay for me to be vulnerable and open up. And now I had a safe space with somebody who looked like me, who identified with me, that I could pour into, and he could hit all of the areas, to hit those spots and challenge me even, to say, okay, this is what I need, not just to give me the generic book answer advice, but to challenge me and saying, okay, this is what you got going on that you need to be aware of, but this is also your part in it that you need to do. When we talk about that accountability piece moving forward, because as Pastor talked about, there's some work you got to do. The first step is getting in the door and having the conversation, but then after that, okay, are you prepared to do the work moving forward? And that's what kind of helps you grow and develop individually. And now you are now equipped to be able to perhaps have those conversations with other men or other individuals that might, that you encounter that might be struggling, and you can kind of bring them in, because now you've gone through that challenge. You've overcome that hump, that hurdle of, being resistant to it at first, getting in there, figuring it out. Okay, now I see that this is what I need to do moving forward. And now you can share that with others who might be resistant, and opening up and being transparent and being vulnerable. So it's a process, but it's steps to it, So I think you have to go through that to get where you need to be. And it's an ongoing thing. I don't think you ultimately ever get to a point where you're quote unquote fixed. It's just that you improve your strategies, your approach to how you handle, the stresses of life, the challenges of life, that you do a better job. Your response is different. It's more positive. It's more effective. It doesn't make it go away. It just, you handle it better. You deal with it. You don't have as many sleepless nights anymore like you used to when you try to keep it all inside. You don't get the ulcers and the and all the other ailments and things that come along with that. So that would be my perspective on that.
Gotcha. So I want to, for our listeners, I want to make sure, I want to deconstruct vulnerability and reconstruct it, because for so long we've been looking at it as weakness, but vulnerability is strength. Vulnerability is having the courage. Vulnerability is actually how fear, you overcome fear, and fear is the number one thing that's holding us back. And Pastor, you alluded to it. Brother Carl, you alluded to it. Uh, the judgment that comes along. Well, we have that fear of the judgment. So it's kind of like, how can we overcome that fear? And vulnerability does that. Pastor, you mentioned because they don't want to. Well, there's reasons why they don't want to, and fear is a big part of that reason. And I'll be on record for saying this. I think we as men are more emotional than women, and a lot of times I get myself in trouble for that. But what you gonna do? That's just my That's my stance on it, because if you got to challenge me on it and you gonna give me backlash because I feel like men are more emotional than women, you're kind of actually proving my point, bruh. Why you offended by me saying that? Because we hold it in, but the fear that is beneath the surface is the emotion that is beneath the surface is fear. The secondary emotion is anger. Brothers get offended when you start talking about why you're so sensitive. Why you acting like a little, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes our sisters like, what you scared? What you scared? Why you ain't doing it? You must be scared of something. So sometimes sisters want to challenge us by saying, well, you must be scared. Or if you just scared, just say so. We get offended by that as well. And so that vulnerability thing is a big thing, and I wanna make sure that we understand what it really is. Paul says in Second Corinthians, he says, when I am weak, then I am strong, which means
Hmm.
he acknowledges that he's weak first. So he would rather glory in his reproaches, infirmities, necessities, trials, and tribulations. He would rather glory in that and take pleasure in that. For when he is weak in Christ Jesus, then he's strong. And that word weak comes to me in the form of vulnerability. He is recognizing his strength in his weakness. And Jesus said right before Paul expressed that my strength is made perfect in your weakness. So I think that we have to reposition and reconstruct what vulnerability really is, because we have had the false premise that vulnerability is weakness, and that's not what it is. So I think, you know, ignorance is a big part of it as well, and we have to kind of unlearn and relearn some things that we've learned. Society has taught us a lot of things that we have to unlearn, but the only way we can unlearn it is to start presenting facts and presenting other things. You mentioned Danny, brother Joe, and and one of the things like is taught in therapy, if from a perspective, is cognitive behavioral therapy. That's a theoretical approach, and cognitive behavioral therapy is there to challenge the negative beliefs and uh, false false thoughts, negative thoughts, and negative belief system that you have. And the techniques that's in cognitive behavioral therapy is thought stopping, thought replacing, and cognitive restructuring. Your whole negative belief and your outlook on life. It's to try to alter and change your worldview on how you see yourself. Because a lot of the times our worldview is what keeps us stressed, what keeps us depressed. Uh, and a lot of us, we deal with post traumatic stress disorder. As a matter of fact, black men, we are the highest in terms of dealing with PTSD than any other race of people in the world. And so I think we have to deal with that pattern of a year. A lot of us has been through a lot of trauma in our lives, whether big or small. And you can't measure trauma. You know what I'm saying? A lot of it's really the perception of the event. It's the perception of the occurrence that determines the magnitude of the trauma. So I think the educational part of it, we have to kind of slide that in there as well, and make sure that that we are not uninformed. I think we have to inform our men as well. This is what you're doing to yourself. Like stress. Stress is the core is the core reason for heart attack, stroke, diabetes, major depressive disorder, a decrease in your anti-aging growth hormones, which means you age faster. You can be 45 going on 85 if you're not if you're not careful. You know what I'm saying? High blood pressure. As another thing, stress contributes to all of that stuff. Stress weakens the immune system, and when your immune system is compromised, you can get sick at anything: the common cold, the flu, and all other immune deficiency syndrome, and all that stuff. Even certain type of cancers can develop at the core of stress and how we deal with the body. So we hold so much stuff in. We gotta find a better way for brothers to uh to get it out, whatever's going on, and we have to create that safe space for them. So um and that goes into the next topic, and I think I'm jumping a little bit, but brother Joseph, you said it. You talked about how everything was set in place for you to be able to get to Danny, because Danny possessed it. Danny possessed something that you needed in order to feel safe enough um, to be able to go to him and express that kind of vulnerability. So, what other things that we need in order to make these not just create the safe space, because we could create the safe space all we want to. What do we need to do, fellas, in order to make the space safe? We created it, but what are some of the characteristics we need to make it safe? What y'all think about that?
Well, I think a key component to feeling safe in a space, especially when you're asking me to be transparent, to be open, to be vulnerable, and we've hit on some of this. I can't feel like I'm gonna be judged. I can't feel like I got to feel like when we talk about what's spoken here stays here kind of thing. you know. So you want that sense of confidentiality and trust. Um, and I think also what makes a space safe is there has to be honest. There has to be honest response. Yeah, in a perfect world, I would love for you to just tell me what I want to hear. But when I'm really in a jam and a tight and a fix, and when we're talking about my mental health and what I need to do to break free from this emotional, this mental bondage that I'm in, I need you to be real with me. I need you to be straight up with me. And I think there's a way that you can be straight up with
Mm-hmm.
from one, since we're talking about men. I think we can be straight up from one man to another without being disrespectful, without being rude, but at the same time being direct. Calling me out if I'm if what I'm talking about is not about the right, speaking that to me in a way that I can receive it from one man to another, because I know that you're doing it in truth. I know you're doing it in love. I know you're doing it, with sincerity and authenticity, and trying to help me, work through whatever it is that I'm trying to work through.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Right.
What you think, brother Carl?
I agree with Mr. Roberts. I mean, I like all that. Only thing I can say to add to that is like what I would like to make it more safe for me. If I'm in a safe environment or a lot of men's talking, I would like a follow up, maybe a call or something, and let me know. Are you still going through that, or whatever we was discussing? Just a follow up to ensure me, that it was genuine.
Mhm.
That's that's it.
Okay, Pastor Alex, what you think? How can we make the space
Well,
safe?
actually went and cheated and got my notes from my therapy
Cheat.
sessions.
Go ahead and cheat.
Um,
Yeah, we need that.
well, I improvised. That's a better word.
Mhm.
Um, of course, you have to respect others' identities. You know, there's a quote by Plato that said it's okay for a child to be afraid of the light, but it's a tragedy for an it's no it's a tr- it's okay for a child to be afraid of the dark, but it's a tragedy for an adult to be afraid of the light. Number one, of course, Matthew 5 and 6. Let your light so shine before men. So
Mhm.
we have to be the light. Uh, Confidentiality. What you tell me stays here. Like, and I can say as a card carrying member of the cloth, I got things stored in my Rolodex I got to take to my grave.
Mm.
And that's where trust comes in. Because I tell people all the time, trust is not easily given, but it is very easy to break.
Hmm.
You be there for support and try to stay positive. Um, and I always tell people when I was limping along, my best friend would call me every day and say, "Hey, you good? What you need?" Even though he is 5 hours away, so what you need anything? Like those are the little things. Because I tell people all the time, we're focused on big targets, but it's the little things that we really need as men to feel safe. Be there for support, try to stay positive, welcome new ideas and other perspectives. This is the one that gets us in trouble. Um, because even Albert Einstein, and I love quotes, said you can't solve a problem with the same consciousness and or mindset that created it.
Mm.
Even though you see a person where, okay, they gotta get this other mindset going. How do you do that? Of course, by example. But number two, you have to listen, and you have to listen to hear and listen to understand. You know, my father always told me there's a difference between listening and hearing, because it's like the thing that we say in church where, you know, don't always just be hearers, but what, doers. You know, it's put in my brain ever since I was a kid. But then it's just like anything that you get. For example, I'm in the car business. You know, and I can take a car apart, put it back together without thinking about it. But it's like all of us have bought brand new cars.
Mm-hmm.
That emotional attachment you have to that vehicle where it's new, you want to gun it, let's see what she can do, let's stretch her legs. But when you get to about 45, 50, 60 miles, 60,000 miles, that's when it's really time to do the real maintenance.
Mm.
Because it's the miracle is getting the therapy. The second miracle is going through the transformation. The third miracle is maintaining the transformation. You know, because all change, you have to make it, you have to manage it, and then ultimately you have to master it. Even as a musician, obviously, that fella said something that it was in my brain all day. Now I know why, because I'm here. Um, he said the good musicians are the ones who can play what they can master. Those are the good musicians. Even with limitation, they learn to master what's in front of them. So that's the one thing about safe spaces. We have to make those safe spaces, we have to manage those safe spaces, and we have to master the safe space.
Gotcha. So empathy is got to be at the forefront of that thing in
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
terms of being able to embrace other people's perspective. Actually, that's what empathy is. Empathy is to make the attempt to put yourself in other people's shoes and see things from their worldview. So we have this fancy term called unconditional positive regard in mental health, and that fancy term just means acceptance. Accept the person for who they are at the moment that they are that person without judgment. Unconditional positive regard. Now, also, you mentioned the word understanding, and there's a scripture that says that all thy getting get understanding. When I looked up that term from the original language, it said such things as comprehension, discernment, and interpretation in terms of, so even in that empathizing way, you have to have a good listening ear in order to um be able to properly understand what's going on, because if you don't listen, which is a part of what discernment is, then you can easily misinterpret, which is also what understanding is, misinterpret what you're hearing. So it is evident that you listen to understand, because that's where you get your discernment, that's where you get your proper interpretation, and that's where you're able to comprehend well in that aspect of it. So in all thy getting get understanding, it's not just a biblical principle. we
Hmm.
use that we use that in mental health as well, and from a psychological perspective as well. We do use discernment, and of course I learned about discernment in grad school in terms of counseling is concerned. And we have to be able to have that. And one of the definitions I saw in terms of having discernment is to hear with the ear of heart. In one of my books that I use a lot when I'm doing research and stuff like that, to hear with the ear of heart, to listen with your whole self and not just part of yourself. Because, like you said, if you have these other different ideologies in your head that can possibly go against what the other person is saying, then you're not listening. Now you're just waiting to, to impose your own ideology, and then that can create a place that's not safe as well, because the brother is trying to really express himself, and you're already trying to get him to see from another perspective. Brother Joseph, I hear you over there contemplating. I see you over there contemplating stuff. You want to add to that?
No, I was just basically quietly affirming what you said, because when we talk about coming alongside somebody, when you talk about spiritual gifts, like one of mine is exhortation. Being able to come alongside somebody in their time of need, to be of encouragement in difficult times, and you think about it, how often when people try to be, quote unquote, be there for you, like especially if you have a traumatic event, like to say like a death, and they're so busy wanting to do a whole lot of talking and all of that, when the most powerful thing that you can do in moments like that is to, as you stated, is to be that good listener, to
Yes.
be that shoulder, to just let me, it's because it's more about your presence. That it's the presence part of it that helps to aid in that safety, in that security, in that comfort space for us, especially as men. If I know that I can, like you said, if I can, pour out to you, and you're actually listening to what I gotta say. You're not, like you said, you're not trying to, I can't get half of my sentence out before you trying to jump in and cut me off and well, then I'm not gonna feel too comfortable in this. I'm not gonna feel too relaxed in sharing in that situation. So that's why I was just thinking about that as you were speaking to that, because that part of it is so important about being a good listener. So when you think about spaces like we're in right now, and just having that circle of people that you can count on, that's really a critical aspect of it, to have whoever it is that you're confiding in with whatever it is that you're dealing with, that they are allowing you that opportunity to release, to let out, and that you are. And we learned in Hilton, this just from our time, and again, facilitating in men's events, affirming what they said. I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate your vulnerability, affirming me, making me feel comfortable that what I just said to you, you're not getting ready to run with that and manipulate it and do something horrible with it, but you're acknowledging what I said. You're affirming me. You're letting me know that it was good that I did what I just did, that I just shared the way I just shared with you. So that's a big piece of that process when you're talking about being there for somebody and having that safe space, to pour out, and knowing that they, again, that they are continuously. It's not, because it's not just about setting up a safe space at the beginning. It has to be throughout the whole entirety of that moment, all the way to the end. And then to what Carl said, is this a one and done, or am I going to hear from you again? You
Yeah.
going to get back with me, or is this, or when Alex talked about, yeah, you had a friend, he's 5 hours away, but that was powerful that he just called to just say you good. Because how often do we have quote unquote friends of ours that, we may have known for years? How many of them call to check in to see if you're good versus calling to check in on you because they need something, or they want something from you, or those things. They're not checking to see if you are right. They just are making an assumption, because that's another thing too, as to why we don't, and this could really apply, across men and women, but I'm just, for sake of our conversation, part of our not being willing to open up is people don't ask. Like, if you don't ask me if I'm good, if I'm doing all right, then you've not even given me an opening to release that. So that's why it's so important, to check in with people, just to say, you good. Like, I think about this right offhand. Like, I think about in my work setting, one of the things as a manager, that I used to like to do, whenever I would have my group meetings with my people, is, I would have, at the very beginning of the meeting, I would have a check-in, where we just kind of do a round table, tell me how you doing, how everything good. Because I'm not just casually asking, I'm giving them that opportunity. And you'd be surprised, and I would get feedback on that. Like, every now and then somebody would tell you that they're not good.
Right.
And they would share a little snippet of something, and then you elevated that surprise when you found out how many people felt that and immediately wanted to say, I'm praying for you.
Yes,
I
indeed.
got you. How that made just a bit. I've talked to people and asked them, I paid attention, like again, I use the example of coworkers, people I've managed, and I pay attention. I'm looking at body language, and I might call you in and be like, how you doing? I'm good. No, I ask you, how are you doing? And then there's this pause. And I've seen it. Tears. And I'm sure, Pastor, you probably have had moments you felt something, you checked in somebody, how you doing? And that momentary pause, and then all of a sudden it just pours out. But it poured out because they first and foremost, because you were thoughtful enough to ask. And then now you've immediately created that safe space for me to open up to you, because you cared enough to ask. Like, how many people have, taken their lives because nobody checked in to just ask you, are you good? You're okay? And to your point, Hilton, and any ladies that get a chance to listen to this or whatever, you'd be surprised how emotional men we're much more emotional than what you think we are. And it means just like you want us to check in with you to see how you feeling and and where you are. To be honest, we appreciate that too, because we need because in a world where we are oftentimes devalued, thought of being less than, constantly, having somebody, foot on our necks, already, predetermined to be failures and not being able to accomplish. When you live in a world like that where nobody is cheering you on and rooting you, we need somebody that says to us, that affirms us, but also just check in with me. You good? So that's huge. They're little things, but they mean a lot. So
I got you. Now, fellas, feel free to jump in anytime y'all get ready. But so what I'm hearing from everybody on this panel is this: consistency, and there's a lack thereof of that. I heard Brother Carl said, "Well, look here. Are you really going to reach out? And is it really going to be a one and done, or is it going to be a consistent thing?" You know what I'm saying? Pastor Alex talked about the 5-hour thing, but he does that on a regular basis. So I think also what's missing is the consistency thereof. You show that good heart, and you show that good heart when you first meet. You show that energy when you first meet, but can you keep that energy going? And so that's kind of what I'm doing. Speaking of Danny, we had a group thing, and I was supposed to do 2 poems for the fellas. It was a men's meeting there, and it was like maybe 25 fellas there that day, and it was my turn to go up. There was another therapist there. There was 2 other therapists there. One had a PhD, and so it was my turn. I was just there for poetry, but the 30 minutes after doing the poetry, the 30 minutes turned into 3 hours, and then it just let it go because sometimes, and this is to your point, and you mentioned it, Brother Joseph. You mentioned being able to relate. I think relatability is a huge factor in it as well. Because if a brother feel like he can't relate, he still ain't gonna open up. I don't care how safe the space may look or may be. If you're not relating to what he's going through in any kind of way, it's gonna be hard for him to talk to you. I went to go speak at a jail a couple of years ago, and a lot of them brothers didn't want to talk to me. I ain't never been to jail before. I ain't never committed no crime before. Now I'm from the hood, so I can speak the hood language. But because I ain't never been through that type of trouble, a lot of brothers just didn't want to talk to me. And I understood why. Because there needs to be a brother who has been through that kind of thing in order for them to relate, to open up. You would not talk to Danny until you can find something that you can relate to. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why brothers keep quiet, because they feel like the person can't relate. So it's about how can we relate, and it brings us into our next topic. I don't know how much time we got, but it brings us into our next topic of authentic male friendships and accountability, and how can that promote mental health. Now, we talked about accountability as well, and I know Pastor Alex alluded to it. I know you alluded to it, Brother Joseph, you too, Brother Carl. Accountability. That's a big thing, because if you deliver accountability in the wrong way, that make people want to put up their dukes, you know. And so I think with that empathy and that unconditional positive regard, because I know for cognitive behavioral therapy, we have this technique called empathic confrontation, which means you do a very soft confronting of the issue by pointing out the discrepancy in the person's words in order for them to get them to see that, you know what, there's a little bit of a contradiction there. So can you explain that to me to make me understand better? Then that can make people open up and make them see themselves. And that's how we do that in therapy. But a lot of times when we come to that accountability, and sometimes, some brothers, you got to give it to them hard, but but you got to make sure you understand the brother that you're working with. Because if you don't understand the brother that you're working with, you could trigger something and you could set something off, even though you're trying to help them. So, what does authentic male friendships look like, and how can that promote mental health? What y'all think about that? That's a tough one. I mean, take a pause. You know what I'm saying? Take a pause. That's a tough one because we're dealing with men. You understand what I'm saying? We're dealing with men. So,
I mean, me personally, I mean, again, the authentic male friendship is when I know that I can tell you that there's nothing that's off the table that I can't bring to you. And again, that you will create a space where you won't be judgmental, but you will hold me accountable. You gonna tell me, Joe, you was wrong for that. Or you gonna keep it real for me. I can count on one hand the number of brothers that I have in my life, and with fingers left, to be honest with you, that I have that type of relationship with, that
right.
I can say anything, that there's nothing that I could, I, I love to be able to tell you that I've been a perfect saint, that I've done it all right all my life. But the rawest, the most, the lowest of lows that I've ever encountered, things that I've said, done, thought, I had no business saying, thinking, or doing, or what have you. Um, I again, I can count on one hand with fingers left as brothers that I have in my life that I can have that conversation with. So when I think of a true, authentic friendship, you know, it's got to be a brother that I can have, that I can lay it all out there. He will process it. He'll exercise some empathy, but his empathy won't be stretched to the degree where he again he condones or justifies behavior that is not becoming of who I'm supposed to be, especially as especially as someone who claims to be a follower of Christ. That, hey, Joe, you was off on that. But then even in Bible speaks to that, even in that rebuke, if it's done in the right way, I can receive the rebuke. And then you can now help me. Okay, well, where do I go from here? my brother, what do you advise? What do you suggest that I do in this situation? So I personally, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that, I would love to have more authentic male friendships like that, because there's certain things that we just have to be able to have other men to talk to, and when we lack having that male presence in our lives of individuals like that to talk to, it's either going to have us holding it in, or it's going to have us talking to uh, perhaps even talking to females about it. And I'm not saying that there aren't any females out there who can't be open-minded and be godly in advisement and things like that. But you got to be careful in that realm, especially if you are, if you're a married man, if you are, if you got other things that are associated with you in terms of your interactions and responsibilities, that you have to be careful about who you speak what to. I mean, even like I said, even as a married person, you might have a good, solid, authentic brother to talk to, but even in that space, as a married man, I can't. My conversation can only go so far with my single friend because there's going to be a point where he can't advise me, because he's going to be advising me from a single man's perspective and not a married man's perspective. So as you elevate in life and take on certain relationships and responsibilities, you need to have at least one person, preferably more than that, but at least one person in your life that kind of fits those particular pockets, that they can relate. Again, going back to that relatability, you know one married man to another married man, one father to another father,
Yes.
you know um you know one brother to another, but whatever the situation is, you got to have that cluster. And unfortunately, to just keeping it real, I haven't had the privilege of, I've known lots of people
Yeah.
in my
Yeah. Yeah.
life. It's not about, do you know a lot of people, and do a lot of people know you, and you laugh and talk and you speak to them and all that. But like when it
Right.
comes down to it, when I'm in my rawest, the raw moment, when I'm when my back is against the wall, and you're feeling dark, it's feeling dark and lonely, who can I pick up that phone? Or better yet, who is picking up the phone when they ain't heard from me?
Right.
Like
Right.
it ain't even about me having to me knowing that I could pick up
Right.
the phone and call any of you. Do I
Right.
have somebody that I know, like, that I can count on it like clockwork, that is
Right.
checking on me on the regular? And I got one brother in my life that's like that, who I've known since childhood, but I only have one who
Right.
checks on me like that.
Right.
but that ain't enough. You need
No.
more of that. You
Yeah.
need a bigger circle of that. So
Yeah. It goes
I,
back to that consistency.
I,
Go ahead.
I,
Go ahead,
I,
brother Carl.
I
What's go ahead and piggyback off of that.
one authentic brother, and it's crazy because I'm in the same boat. Like I have one authentic male friend that held me to accountability for my actions, going through my growing pains of me growing up, telling me right from wrong, getting my mind back set right when I'm ready to go off the chain, to just sit me back where I'm not thinking right. He's seen something in me like, nah, don't go do that, brother. Don't do that. Pray about it first. Pray about that first. And if it wasn't for that action from him, I'd be in trouble now. I wouldn't even be on this podcast because as well as I do, it takes just a second to get in trouble. And
Yep.
then it's gonna take forever to get out of it.
Yes,
So
indeed.
it took that from one, and I counted on my hand. One time I sit back and think of all my friends. And just like Brother Robert said, I only have one person in my circle that I can actually count on that can lead me the right way. And that I won't hear that back. Like if I tell him something, I won't hear it again.
Right.
You won't hear the gospel, but like, Carl, you this and this and that. I never heard nothing. If I didn't told him something, I never heard it back. So that's what I love about him, and just expressing the thing for him, and it made me get better, and it made me strong, and made me uh, uh, do the same thing he did. So I was a shoulder that he can call on or lean on. So it showed me the way to do that, and even like my dad, like you talking about accountability. So how can you make accountability if like some people get set in their ways?
Hmm.
Like we was talking the other night. It's like you telling me stuff, but you say you ain't had a negative bone in your body, but the accountability, you like I even wanted to get, I've been going to therapy myself. I went in when I was 17 years old. It's the biggest thing. I always loved therapy.
Right.
And he would say, "Why? What you going to see them for? What are you going to see them for?" Like it helps me out. It helps me be
Right.
a better man. You
Yeah.
know, it always helped me. I didn't go just a one time. It was in and out through my, through life, through my marriage, through all kind of stuff. I always went to counselor or went to a therapy because it always got that monkey off my back. It made me do 100% with my life. It made me think, and made me do the right things. But he would say, like, ain't nothing wrong with me. Ain't nothing wrong with me. So now I'm gonna put it on myself where we can go to counseling together, just so he can, talk to somebody. So, if you set in your ways, I can't tell you nothing. So I just want to all be together at one, session, and then maybe something he can see somebody else telling him something, and he can, kind of get with the program. I just want him to, to see what other people like us see by
Right.
going through therapy.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So Pastor Alex, what's your criteria for authentic friendship? Because I think we all have certain criteria of what we need from our fellow brethren. What would be your criteria for an authentic male friendship?
Now, this is going to kind of come across as a left cross that I've been keeping under the radar, but
Come with it.
I had to learn how to classify my friends, if that makes sense.
There you go.
mhm.
Because I know I got some, I hate to use this term, I got some thugs over here that if I need something, or I'm like, hey, just give it to me straight, no chaser, just punch me. they'll do that. And then I have the ones with the discernment that say, "Hey, you hit my radar. What's going on?" Then you know you can't hide from them, because
Mm-hmm.
no matter how much of a seer or a discerner you are, there's some points in life where you just don't want to be read. But then there's points where you have to be because it forces an adjustment.
Right.
But then there are the others, and I always tell men such as yourselves that have that, that pick up the phone, that are there for people. Be careful of your limits as a giver, because the takers have none.
Mm.
I don't know why I'm looking sideways,
Yeah.
but they don't have it.
Yeah, we can still
They
see you. So go ahead and do your
Okay.
thing.
I mean, I don't know what that's about, but they don't. Um, so of course I tell people all the time, I got a lot of associates. See,
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right.
we all got a lot of associates,
Mm-hmm.
but that book tells me that a friend loves at all times,
Yes, indeed.
even when I'm messing up, and that a brother is born for the day of adversity. Okay, like I tell people all the time, the first question that I ask people that want to be in my circle: Can you fight? What you talking about? Physically? No. Spiritually? Can you fight? Because you can't fight, you can't be alongside me.
Right.
You know, it's got it. You remember that thing that came on during COVID, The Last Dance?
Mm-hmm.
And when Michael came back from playing baseball,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, I walk in, the only person that's left from the first championship is Scottie Pippen.
Yeah.
And everybody in there is riding high off three banners we please. Y'all didn't have anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So, that standard is here, but you're here, and I don't like to talk like this, but it's the truth. I'm gonna ride you till you get on the same level with me.
Mm-hmm.
Because, something James Brown said, if you're not helping us, you're holding us back. And especially in terms of spirituality, everybody has a place. It's something the late G.E. Patterson said. He said, you have to know your place and stay in it.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody can be Michael Irvin. Sometimes you got to be Leon Lett or Jay Novacek or something like that. Not everybody can be the quarterback. Not everybody can be Michael Jackson. Maybe you got to be Tito or Randy, or one of the others.
Same.
But we
Yeah.
all have a role. And authentic friendships, to me, to answer the question, is knowing my role as a player on your team.
Mm.
Because I know if I can do my part, then I can hold you accountable for doing yours. And if I'm not doing my part, pull me to the side and tell me, hey, dude, mm, what's going on? You've been MIA. Obviously you're not KIA because you breathe. But these are the things. These are the very simple things that we have to um, really come to understand, that make friendships, because loose ships sink ships.
Hmm.
Let me say that again for the homies in the back.
That's good.
Loose ships sink ships.
Mm.
Even if you think that ship is unsinkable, we know the story about the Titanic.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the fact that it hit an iceberg, it was the rivets that they put in the metal that came apart at the worst inopportune time, because you got all this cold water and force hitting it, centripetal force. There you go. You
Mm.
just killed 1,500 people off your arrogance.
Mm.
So hopefully that gives you a good answer there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like for me, the criteria for me is two things. I need to be heard and I need to be understood. If we can't get past them two, then it's probably gonna be a wrap after that. If you can't hear me, if you can't understand me, and if you're not trying to, then we're pretty much wasting each other's time. And this is for anybody. Like I don't care if you're male or female. This is for anybody. The authenticity. If there's some chemistry and there's some connection there, it's gonna naturally happen anyway. Friendships are not forced. And to your point, Pastor Alex, a friend sticks closer to you than a relative,
Mm.
right? And so that's what the that's what the scripture says. I
Uh-huh.
wanted to piggyback off of that because I know you alluded to that, so I wanted to bring that scripture in there, and, and piggyback off of that. And so if there's no natural chemistry and connection there, then we're pretty much wasting our time.
Mm.
And that's what I feel from brothers who have a problem opening up to other brothers, because there needs to be some chemistry there as well. So like I say, when I was at Danny's place and the 25 brothers are there, they listened to each individual point, and I swear I couldn't get to my second poem until it was time for me to end it, and it went from 30 minutes to 3 hours. They heard some things in the poem that related to them, and everybody wanted to talk after that
Mm.
because there was some relatability. It goes back to that again. You know what I'm saying? That if there's no chemistry there, if you're not having that listening ear, and I think have empathy. Empathy has to be on both sides in order for it to be authentic and sincere. And I'm at this point now. I can tell when somebody is putting on a performance in front of me. I can tell when the lack of authenticity is there. Now I'll entertain it because as you said, Pastor Alex, I have a lot of associates as well, so I know a good performance when I see one. And so if it's not there, I think we should be able to understand that, okay, it's nice to meet you, this is good, but and we can part ways from now. I think so. I don't think friendships are forced. I think friendships are natural things that develop, and I can count on the fingers that I have left to the friends that I got. I mean, I may have two or three in my circle that I can call on, consistently. um but that's about it. And trying to increase that. I don't think that a whole bunch of friends is needed.
Mm.
It just need to be a few that you can detox and you know pour out, and and dump your garbage on, so to speak. It don't have to be that many. So there's some things that we kind of alluded to. I wanna also talk about communication as well, because I think how we communicate will also determine whether or not people will open up and listen to you, or people will open up and talk about their things. So in terms of accountability, we talk about the approach of accountability. So in terms of communication, I want to put some stats out there. Communication is 55% body language, 38% tone, 7% verbal, which means a combined 93% of communication has nothing to do with what you say, but how it's presented and in the way it's delivered. That's nonverbal communication. 93% of communication is nonverbal, 7% is verbal. So if your presentation is off, if your delivery is jacked up, it's not going to matter what you let come out of your mouth. And that's also a big issue of why people hold it in, because people, not only do they let anything come out of their mouths, but they say it with such aggression and such vitriol, if I could say that, and it's extremely toxic in terms of how people present themselves, particularly when brothers come up to each other and say, stop acting like that, suck
Mm.
it up, and all other stuff. I can't say it, but I'm from the streets, so I'm figured most of us have been in the streets long enough to know what I'm talking about, so I won't have to go there. And
Mm.
so I think our communication, our tone, and our body language needs practice as well. I think our choice of words also needs practicing as well. I mean, there's a lot of things that has to be there in terms of how we communicate and how we develop these friendships. And I always think about the friendship between David and Jonathan. I gotta say, um, I got a couple of Jonathans in my circle, and I'm okay with that. You know what I'm saying? But you can't find that type of friendship anywhere. And so I'm thankful for that. Like Sister Stephanie commented and said that she used the scripture, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So I want to give some neurological information on that as well. Also, it is in the brain has a reward system, and the brain will reward anything you tell it, right? It says death and life is in the power of the tongue, as a thing in his heart, so is he. So if you keep telling yourself that you are this person, the brain will reward any information you tell it, whether it's right, wrong, truth, false, fact or fiction, accurate or not. The brain will automatically reward that behavior. So a lot of the times we think these negative thoughts about ourselves, and the brain will legitimize that regardless of its truth or the lack thereof. And so I wanted to make sure that we understand that as well. So in terms of the negativity and the negative stigma that comes across with opening ourselves up, a lot of brothers are convinced of the fact, and sometimes there's nothing you can do to change their mind, that being vulnerable is not a grown man characteristic, right? That's one of the challenges, and I know one of the topics is about challenging and stuff like that. And one of the challenges is getting brothers to open up because they still struggle with that aspect of it, and it's tragic. So one of the things I want to ask from that perspective, because I know it's hard for brothers to for us to communicate and all this other stuff, but for those of us who have women in our lives, what can we tell the ladies in terms of how to deal with us from an emotional standpoint? Now, I know, brother Joseph, you spoke about uh, women in that aspect of it. We can go talk to a female or something like that. So I know that women can naturally soften us, and I know that women can harden us as well. And so, what advice do we give to our female listeners that we can say, okay, how do you deal with a man who has a problem opening up or has a problem with vulnerability? What do we tell our sisters? Anybody could go.
Well,
Uh, Go ahead.
well, the first thing I tell them to do is stay off social media.
That's a good one.
Uh, I mean,
That's a
really.
good one.
I mean,
Yeah, no, for real, for real. That's why I'm laughing. No, I'm laughing with you. I ain't
that
laughing at you. That's a good one right there.
that's the very first thing, because we live in a world of influence now,
Hmm.
and now, you know, uh, as crazy as I was watching a program. I'm not gonna say what program it was, but you'll figure it out by the time I finish saying it. Well, the guy was like asking, like, well, why did you break up with this guy? I was, well, I was watching Tyler Perry's Acrimony movie, and da 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 da, and I'm sitting here just, yeah, the same face you see here is what I'm. So you gonna let a 30-second clip dictate your future or mess up your good thing? There was a song uh in the 70s by Natalie Cole where she has a monologue and she says, if you got a good thing, keep your good thing. And that's the problem. The influence of social media has, well, this is how you need to deal with this, and he shouldn't be doing this. And he, no, 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 no. I told somebody a week ago. I said, because she was kind of dealing with this. I don't know how to talk to him, and he's so closed off. I said, do you have mothers in your church? Automatically, the defense goes up. What I want to talk to them for? I said, they can tell you how to get out of what you're in, because half of them been married 40, 50 years. It can tell you that the approach of shoot here, shoot now, and then when everything is dead, ask a question or two is not going to work. And here's another component, because I love giving euphemisms and examples. Y'all remember the movie Life?
What, Eddie Murphy?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And remember when they stopped talking for like 20, 30 years?
Hmm.
And the guy was rolling out to the infirmary, and he said, no matter how strong a man is, there is a breaking point,
Yeah.
and it can be triggered by a song,
Man,
even a smell.
Hmm.
apple
Means
pie.
whites
Mhm.
only pie. But but my but my point is, you have to. That's why old folks say, Betty Wright said in the song, I was studying my man. while keeping my man. Hopefully I got the lyric right, but you get the point. You have to know how to get in. It's not so much as, oh, I can get in. It's how you get there. And like you said, Hilton, it's not what you say, but it's how you say it, but it's what's in what you say. What's the motive here?
Mm,
Are
that's
you
good.
fishing PHISHING for information? Or are you coming to me as my partner, my significant other, my rider? Hey, what's up?
Hmm.
So number one, stay off of social media because that's gonna get you messed up.
Hmm.
Because half these people can't even keep something a nickel's worth of dog meat, and y'all know it.
Yeah.
And the other part, you have to know the vulnerability points. Kind of like in your body, you have pressure points. You know, how do I get to the meat of the problem or the problem without stomping on toes? Once again, that vulnerability thing, stomping on his toes, triggering something that I might not know about because triggers are real.
Yes,
Hmm.
they are.
And then I can't compare this to something else that I dealt with because comparison kills. Very good song by Jonathan McReynolds, if you want to know the source. So
Yep.
that's my take on that. Hopefully the fellas can uh, hit us with some more.
What you got, brother Carl? What would you tell our sisters in terms of how to deal with us in terms of vulnerability and dealing with stress and being able to open up?
I would just say, just listen us out. Listen us out. Because we go through a lot. You know, um, it's a lot. It's a lot going into just even going into the world of the working world. When we come home, that's our safe place. So we don't want to hear, something soon we come through the door. If we say if we finna talk or have that, that little talk we finna have, and just, listen to us, and then, still don't judge us. The same thing is if next week we get in an argument, don't bring that up. What I just told you. You might bring it up, and I was being vulnerable with you, and now I can't be vulnerable with you no more. So, just listen.
Right.
Be compassionate about it. So that's what I think. Um, and keep encouraging us. That we can. We can do it. Uh, uh, Pat us on the back. We stick our chests out. If we get that confirmation, that we the man. Tell us it's gonna be okay. It just takes a little bitty thing like that from our significant other. You know.
Right. Right. Don't take much. Yeah. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Brother Joe, what you got?
I would say, kind of tapping into what Carl mentioned. It's the encouragement, it's the affirming. We've been talking about this whole, dialogue about, again, the conversation about the safe space. And so if that significant other in your life, your wife, or what have you, if she's wanting to have you be that man who's open and, and willing to communicate and share, whatever it is that you're feeling, what's going on with you, whatever, it's almost like, the best way I can, categorize it, it's almost like emotional foreplay. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you are constantly, I should use the word consistently. You consistently affirm me. You consistently encourage me. And to do that, it doesn't mean that you're kissing up to me or anything like that. You're just acknowledging that, that you see me, and that that you're proud of me, that you like the fact that I'm doing what I'm doing, and that you're there for me. I mean, again, it doesn't require this big to do or anything like that. It's just those little nuggets right there. When you know that you have somebody by your side that does that for you, then when you are going through, when you've had that rough day and you need somebody to air it out to, that's willing to be a listening ear and help you to navigate through whatever that situation is, you're going to feel comfortable opening up to her and
Mm-hmm.
saying what you. But if to what Carl said, if the normal day to day is the minute I walk in the door after I done dealt with the craziness of the world, and I walk into my home, and it's just as crazy or crazier here as it is out there, then I
Mm-hmm.
shut down. I
Mm-hmm.
keep it to myself. I isolate. Why don't you say this? Why don't you say that? I'm good. I'm good because I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like you really care. That if anything, it's kind of like what Pastor said. It feel like you just fishing for information. You're not. There's not a genuine concern about my day or how I'm feeling or where I'm at or what I'm doing. So now we end up, like I said, it becomes this secretive type thing. It becomes this withholding, and to that point, I mean, if it gets too rigid like that,
Mm-hmm.
eventually, as Pastor said, everybody has a breaking point.
Hmm.
I'm a firm believer there's always somebody watching you.
Mm-hmm.
As men in particular, there's always a young lady out there that's watching you, that's paying attention to your body language, your mood, your way. um she feels you, she's interested. She may not have verbalized that or anything like that directly, but she's paying attention to you. And if you get caught in a vulnerable moment because you're not getting that proper feeding at home, the proper encouragement, it opens you up to be. And I don't say this to justify anything. It would still be wrong if you go there, but it explains it why you might do that.
Mm-hmm.
um and then now you get to talking about stuff that you ain't supposed to be talking about to somebody else. You're doing it with the wrong person because you're that like we just talked about those triggers. That's
Mm-hmm.
that smell, that word, that very thing that you were hoping to get from the one that you're with when giving it to you. Then whoever she is out there done said it or introduced that aroma to you, and now you done took a little sniff of it, and then you like it, and you get a little bit more, and you get a little bit more, and then before you know it, you guard
Mm-hmm.
completely down. You
Yeah.
make a mistake that's not something you can't take back,
Hmm.
and now you've disrupted and opened up all kind of things. Again, doesn't justify the behavior, but it
No.
explains why these type of things happen when you don't take care of you know one another, when you don't hold up one another, when you don't support one another. And it goes both ways, but when you don't do that, then you're letting the enemy in. You're opening yourself up for the attack. you know you're opening up yourself to get caught off guard, and then that's when
Yeah.
stuff happens. and
Right.
and again, you do things, you say things, partake in things that you can't take back, and then
Hmm.
here you are. So
Yeah. So we gonna wrap this up. I wanna piggyback on what everybody said in terms of our sisters. We're gonna wrap this up because we got about 2 or 3 minutes left. Yeah, we got about 3 minutes left. So the scripture says, First Peter chapter 3, and it says, it talks about the women. It says that men are won over by the conversation of the wife or the conversation of the woman. And that word conversation, it means the conduct, the character, the demeanor, the manner, the behavior of the woman. Women are won over, men are won over by the conversation of the woman. So I would say words of affirmation, show appreciation to the man, that you appreciate him. Words of affirmation, compliment him. That's an easy way to soften us up and to get us to open up. Show interest in him as well, and show that if you have a genuine interest in him, he's liable to open up about anything if you're sincerely and authentically interested in him. Also, even in tough conversations, make sure that even in tough conversations when you're confronting a man, make sure accountability is a part of your speech before you actually speak. So, um, I want to thank all the gentlemen from coming on today. I want to thank Sister Stephanie, of course, for allowing this platform. And I think that Sister Stephanie, she understands. I think she has understanding a better understanding than most that we as men also need that support from our women. So I appreciate her support and opening up this network that we as brothers can come together and talk about this thing. So I think I think Sister Stephanie is the prime example of trying to understand us better because we need that. So we thank everybody for listening in. Next time we talk, we're going to talk about mental health from a perspective of how can we keep good mental health because we didn't get a chance to touch on that today, but we'll touch on that next time. Thank y'all so much, and we'll see you in 4 Sundays from now.
Thank you, Rise and Elevate.